Hey guys, it's Katie. Welcome back to my channel, or hi if you're new, and welcome to my second video in my new fall recommendation series. Today we're having the energy drink out of my favorite Harry Potter mug. I have been getting questions about this energy drink in every video that I'm drinking one in. So it's linked down below in the description if you guys want to try them out. I would recommend either the cotton candy grape flavor or the rainbow candy flavor. But anyway, the first video in this series I recommended my favorite spooky thrillers, but today I wanted to talk about dark spooky books. And so this isn't just one kind of genre, it was more about the vibe I get from the book and kind of how atmospheric it was. And by dark, I don't necessarily mean scary, I just mean it's creepy and dark and it feels like a Halloween book. It's very atmospheric. So yeah, I have 9 books to recommend to you today. I'll have them all linked down below in the description if you want to go check them out, as well as the whole playlist for my fall recommendation videos, because if you're watching this in the future, I'll probably have more videos in this series up by now. I'm planning on making a more light-hearted recommendations, just like cozy, fun fall reads, and then also a paranormal romance recommendation video. But today we're going to be talking about the dark, spooky, creepy books, and I'm really excited about it. If you've already read any of these, I would love to hear what you thought of them down below in the comments, or feel free to leave some more recommendations down there, both for myself and for everyone else who's watching this, so we can all find lots of spooky books to read this October. And without further ado, let's get straight into the video. So the first book that I'm going to recommend to you today is The Coldest Girl in Cold Town by Holly Black. This is a vampire book, and this is also a paranormal romance. This will probably be in my paranormal romance recommendation video. But I think this is my all-time favorite Holly Black book. I really like The Cruel Prince and everything, and I've read a ton of her other books, but I think this one still remains to be my favorite book. This book follows Tana. She's a teenage girl, and in her world, these cold towns exist, which is basically quarantined areas for vampires to live, and humans can go in to hang out with the vampires, but once they enter a cold town, they can never leave. And she finds herself in the situation with this boy that she doesn't know and her ex-boyfriend, who is like alarmingly endearing, and the only solution that she can think of is to head straight into a cold town. This one I'm 100% recommending because of the vibe, because of the atmosphere. I just loved the way that this was written. It's so vivid, and I'm actually extremely bummed that this is a standalone, because I would have read an entire series about this world. I just loved the world. Like I said, this is also a paranormal romance, so I enjoyed the romance aspect. It's been a really long time since I've read this, but I would also recommend the audiobook. Now that I'm talking about this book, I'm really wanting to reread this, so I think I'm gonna reread this in October this year. I personally just am a sucker for vampire books. You'll probably notice that in all of these recommendation videos. I read a lot of vampire books, but this is one of my favorite ones. Her take on vampires isn't entirely unique, but I just thought it was really well done, and I just really liked the idea of these cold towns. Highly recommend this one, especially if you've read some of Holly Black's other books and you know that you like her books in general. I think this is one of her best ones. The next book I'm going to be talking about is The Diviners by Libba Bray. This is the first book in a series, and this is a young adult sort of mystery set in the 1920s, and our main character Evie is sent to live with her uncle in New York, and he runs this really creepy museum. And while she's living in New York, there's this serial killer who's making his way around, and Evie has this secret power that she doesn't want anyone to know about. When she touches objects that belong to people, she can see their secrets basically, and with this serial killer going around, she realizes this power might be able to help her find who's killing all of these women. I loved this book. I love our main character. She's so funny and sassy. Again, super atmospheric. I love the 1920s setting. I'm actually currently reading the sequel to this right now. It's called Layer of Dreams. Would definitely recommend the audiobooks for this series as well. And this one is chilling. This one is probably one of the scarier ones of my recommendations, especially if you're freaked out by like serial killers and stuff. I wouldn't say this is like outwardly scary or anything, but it's definitely kind of like, ooh, I'm a little creeped out by that. And I'm really enjoying the sequel so far, so if you end up enjoying this, the first 3 books in the series are out. I think the 4th one comes out next year. But I love how we have the 1920s setting. We have this weird little supernatural twist with Evie's powers, and then we also have the creepy mystery of this serial killer. It all just comes together to have the perfect atmosphere and vibe for Halloween. I think this is like the perfect series for this time of year. Highly recommend. And this is actually coming from someone. I haven't liked any of Libba Bray's previous books. I've tried lots of her series in the past, and I just haven't been able to get into her books, but I really like these books. The next book I'm going to be recommending to you is more of a recent release, and that is The Devouring Grey by Christine Lynn Herman. I didn't love this book. I think I gave it like a 3.75 out of 5 stars, somewhere around there, but you can't deny that this book is perfect for for this time of year. Very atmospheric, very dark and gothic feeling. I loved the atmosphere and the sense of place in this book. It's my favorite thing about this book. So this book is set in a small town in New York that's surrounded by this forest, and we have 4 main characters who are from the founding families of this town. And these founding families are sort of charged with protecting the town from a beast that lives in the forest. And these 4 founding families all have some kind of weird power that's special to their family, and we're following Violet. Her mom grew up in this small town but doesn't seem to remember anything about her childhood there, and they move back to this small town. And so Violet doesn't know anything about her ancestry, doesn't know why she's a founder or what that really means. And I always like books where a main character has no idea what's going on because you get to learn along with them. So learning the world was very easy because she was learning it right along with you. This is also the first book in a duology, I believe. Very angsty, very dark, very atmospheric. I really enjoyed this one. I think what killed it for me was just I went into this book with really high expectations because this sounded like it was going to be right up my alley. I love dark books, and it was still good. It just isn't a new favorite of mine, but I've heard other people say that they enjoyed this book a lot more than I did, so give it a try if it sounds like it might be your thing. I do think it's well written. I really liked the character Isaac, and it was definitely very unique. The next book I'm going to be talking about might come as a surprise to you if you've been around since last year, maybe it was 2 years ago that I talked about this book, and that's The Merciless by Danielle Vega. So I didn't like this book. I gave this book a 2 out of 5 stars, but I'm including it in this video because I know this is 100% a case of it's me, not the book. This book just wasn't my thing. This is straight up horror. This is probably like, I guess, the scariest out of all of these books if you're afraid of this type of horror. Our main character is the new girl in school, and she gets swept up with the popular crowd, and they're all very religious, and they essentially kidnap the misfit girl in their class to perform an exorcism on her to try and save her, and this new girl gets like swept up in all of this. And so I had really high expectations for this book, and it's also the first book in a series, so if you like this, you've got like 4 books to read. And this book wasn't bad, which is obviously why I'm including this in the recommendation video. It's just, it leans more towards torture horror, which is just not a subgenre of horror that I enjoy. Personally, I don't find it scary, I just find it gross. But if you like slasher movies and torture horror, like the Saw movies and stuff like that, you'll probably really like this. Just if you know your preferences, if you like torture horror, give this one a try. If you know that's not your thing, definitely don't. All of these so far have been young adult books. The next one I have to recommend to you is an adult book. I'm sorry if you can hear the ice like swishing around in here. And that is The Passage by Justin Cronin. This is actually one of my all-time favorite books. It is a commitment. This book is like 800 pages, small text, and it's also the first book in a series, and was also adapted into a TV show. This book is another vampire book, but completely different than The Coldest Girl in Cold Town. These vampires are more of like the rabid animal type of vampires, and it's sort of a survival story. So the book is split into 2 parts, and the first part you see these scientists who are performing human experiments trying to find a cure for diseases, and everything goes wrong, and they end up creating these vampires who escape, and it turns into an epidemic. That's not a spoiler, like you know going in what's gonna happen. The second half of the book jumps ahead like 100 years to what the world looks like now that the vampires have essentially taken over, and we're following this group of humans who are trying to survive. This book is phenomenal. Like, I cannot praise this book enough if you like vampire stories. This one is definitely more of a horror novel and a survival story, but I just loved this book so much. This is another one that I might reread this year because it's been a while. I was skeptical because I hate whenever books get me attached to a cast of characters and then jumps ahead 100 years and you have to get used to this whole new cast of characters, you know? It's hard to pull that off. But in this book, I liked both casts of characters equally. I enjoyed reading both stories equally. I think it's done really, really well. I love the characters in this book. Yeah, this is a book that I read in high school, actually. I took a sci-fi and fantasy class my senior year. So it's been 5 or 6 years since I read this book, and it's still something that I think about. It's still something that's stuck with me. So this is not forgettable. This is not something you're gonna read and just like never think about again. This is such a good book. Like I said, it's a bit of a commitment just because it's so long, but it's so fast paced and so interesting and just so well written that I don't even think you're gonna notice how long it is. Highly recommend. Please someone read it and come talk to me about it. The next book I'm gonna recommend is Between the Devil and the Deep Blue Sea by April Genevieve Tucholk. This is the first book in a duology, and I really didn't like the sequel, so I'm recommending this one. Don't read the sequel, just read this one. But as you can probably tell from the cover, this is a super atmospheric and spooky, creepy book. I loved the setting of this book. Again, this is set in a small seaside town, and our main character's name is Violet in this one too. That seems to be a common name for like dark books. It's sort of a contemporary romance because this mysterious guy moves into Violet's guest house and she starts starts to fall for him before realizing there might be something kind of weird about him. So it's like a paranormal, creepy, dark, contemporary romance. So it reads like a contemporary book, but it's very dark, and there's this little underlying mystery going on because you don't really know what this guy's deal is because he's new to town, no one knows his story, and weird things start happening. The setting is 100% my favorite part of this book. I just love how creepy and dark it felt. And again, this is just very unique. I don't think I've ever read anything quite like this. It's very weird. If you've read any of her books before, you probably know what I'm talking about. It's very weird and like abstract, but I really enjoyed it. The next book I'm going to recommend to you is Another Little Piece by Kate Carrius Quinn. This is more of a horror novel, also young adult, as you can probably tell from the cover. I've heard some people really didn't like this book, but personally I really liked it. Again, it's very different from anything I've ever read. The thing is, you don't really know whose point of view you're reading from. The book opens with our main character being in the middle of nowhere. People find her and start calling her by the name Annalise, and the girl's like, what are you talking about? Like, that's not my name. Like, that's the name of the girl whose body our main character is in, but we don't really know who our main character is. And so now she's kind of going along with the life of the girl whose body she's in, and we start to discover kind of like what's going on. It's written in a very weird, like whimsical, poetic way. Again, it's the atmosphere of this one that I liked so much, and things get really weird towards the end. So if you just want something kind of like weird and you're just gonna be like, what the heck did I just read after you finish this? I would recommend this one. I personally really enjoyed this. Kind of on a similar note, I'm also recommending The Dark Beneath the Ice by Amelia Berube. This is an ARC, but this book is definitely out by now. And in this book, we're following our main character who used to be a dancer. Her parents have recently split up, and her mother is not doing well mentally, and weird things start happening to her. She's like losing time. She can't really remember what she's done. Objects start moving around her, all of the, you know, horror movie kind of things. And she begins to think that something is following her. And it's compared to Black Swan and Paranormal Activity. And I think I gave this a 3 out of 5 stars at the time. It was a weird reading experience. When I first finished it, I didn't love it, but then I like kept thinking about it after I was done, and the more like distance between finishing the book, I started to think that I liked it more. It was just something that really made me think. It didn't go in the direction that I thought it was going to, but it's very dark, very creepy. If you like Black Swan, Paranormal Activity, or like The Exorcist and stuff like that, you'll probably like this. Most horror books that I've read that are young adult I haven't really liked, but this one's better than most of the ones that I've read. And then the last book that I'm going to be recommending in today's video is This Savage Song by Victoria Schwab. I just love Victoria Schwab, so honestly, pick up any of her books. Safe bet for any of them. But this book in particular, I feel like works really well for this time of year. Very creepy, very dark. This book is set in a world where different monsters exist, and they're basically born out of violent acts, and depending on how bad the violent act was is what type of monster is born from it. And so we're reading from 2 point of views. One is a human and one is a monster who just kind of wants to get along in the human world. And the different monsters do different things. Like some of the monsters like play songs and it steals human souls. Like it's just a very interesting world. This is the first book in a duology, and I just really liked how it plays with the theme of like what it means to be human and how different are humans and monsters, morality, that kind of stuff. And I really like the dynamic between our 2 main characters when they meet. And as always, I love Victoria Schwab's writing style. I still haven't read the sequel to this one yet. I really need to. I read this in a very short amount of time, ended up giving it a 5 out of 5 stars, would totally recommend this one. So yeah, those are all of the books that I'm going to be talking about in today's recommendation video. Thank you guys so much for watching. I hope you found one in here that sounds like it might be something you would enjoy. If you haven't already seen part 1 with my thriller recommendations, I'll have it linked down below. And if you're new here, I would love it if you would subscribe. I put up at least 2 new videos every single week, and I would love to have you stick around. Follow me on Instagram if you want. All of my links are down below in the description. And other than that, I think I'll just see you guys in my next video very soon. Bye.
So hit me. So hit me. So hit me. First a confession. With you, I feel a connection. With